Character notes. Peter Young, narrator, 52-year-old night janitor at Mercy Hospital, widower, father to Sarah, once dreamed of studying chemistry. Sarah Young, Peter's daughter, a music education student at NYU working multiple jobs. Melissa Dixon, CEO and founder of Dixon Industries, a chemical manufacturing company, falls into a coma after a stroke. Thomas Dixon, Melissa's son, 42, plots to have his mother declared dead to inherit her company. Jessica Rodriguez, a 28-year-old ICU nurse. Dr. Martinez, the neurologist treating Melissa. Richard Stevens, the hospital administrator bribed by Thomas. Dr. Patricia Cole, the administrator who replaces Stevens. Margaret Winters, Melissa's attorney and longtime friend, in her 70s. Rachel, Peter's late wife, who died when Sarah was 3. I'm standing at the rear of St. Catherine's Church in Manhattan, watching a funeral that has no business happening. 400 people fill the pews, crying, mourning, saying their goodbyes to a woman who is not dead. I know this because I saw her myself at 3 that same morning. I spoke to her. She was breathing. And now her son stands at the podium delivering a eulogy about letting her go peacefully. And I know, every word of it is a lie. My name is Peter Young. I'm 52, and I work nights as a janitor at Mercy Hospital on Manhattan's Upper East Side. 30 years spent mopping floors and emptying bedpans. 30 years of being invisible. 30 years of people looking straight through me as though I were part of the furniture. 30 years of, hey, you missed a spot, and can you clean this up, never once followed by a thank you or a how are you. I never really minded. Honest work is honest work, and I took pride in what I did, pride in keeping the hospital clean and safe, pride in raising my daughter Sarah on a janitor's paycheck after losing my wife when Sarah was only 3. Still, there were nights, plenty of them, lying awake in my cramped Queens apartment listening to the neighbors upstairs argue, when I'd think about the life I never got to live, the chemistry degree I never pursued, the research career that never materialized, the potential that never got the chance to matter, because life had other plans for me. I'm not bitter. Truly, I'm not. Sarah grew up beautiful and kind and gifted despite having only me and a salary that barely stretched past rent. She's at NYU now, studying music education, juggling 3 part-time jobs because my income alone couldn't cover the difference. But sometimes I do wonder what it might have felt like to become the person I once dreamed of being, instead of the person circumstances required. And for the last 3 weeks, I've spent every night cleaning the ICU room of a woman named Melissa Dixon, talking to her while she lay in a coma, playing her music, treating her like a human being instead of a body in a bed. And today, I'm about to do something that will either save her life or wreck my own. I'm about to stop this funeral. Before we go further, where are you tuning in from today? Drop it in the comments. It's March 18th, 2023, a Saturday morning. I shouldn't be here. By all rights, I should be finishing my shift at Mercy Hospital, mopping floors, and emptying trash the way I have for 30 years. Instead, I'm standing inside this church, at this funeral, because I overheard something I was never meant to hear. Let me back up and explain how it started. 3 weeks earlier, on February 25th, Melissa Dixon was brought into Mercy Hospital's ICU following a massive stroke, found unconscious at her desk at Dixon Industries, the chemical manufacturing company she'd built from nothing into a billion-dollar empire over 4 decades. I had no idea who she was at first. To me, she was simply the patient in room 407, another body hooked to machines, another room on my 11 o'clock cleaning route once the visitors had gone home and the hospital had gone quiet. I worked the night shift, 3rd shift, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 5 nights a week. I cleaned the ICU, the surgical floors, the cafeteria. I empty biohazard bins, mop up blood, disinfect whatever needs disinfecting. 30 years of it, since I was 22. People rarely notice janitors. We're the ones who arrive after everyone else has left, who scrub the hospital back into shape for the morning shift, who keep the place running while nobody spares us a thought. Doctors don't meet your eyes. Nurses are polite but distant. Patients are usually too sick or too unconscious to register you at all. That's fine. I got used to it long ago. But there's a strange privilege to being invisible. You see everything. You hear everything. Because people forget you're even in the room. The first night, I cleaned Melissa Dixon's room. She was utterly alone. No family. No visitors. No flowers. No cards. Just the steady beeping of machines and the sterile smell of hospital air. The nurse on duty, Jessica Rodriguez, 28, kind-eyed, the sort who actually bothers to learn a janitor's name, was checking vitals when I wheeled in my cart at 11. "You can clean," she said, not looking up from the chart. "She's stable. Deep coma. No brain activity yet. Family's trying to decide what to do." I nodded and started my routine. Emptied the trash, nearly empty since she'd had no visitors to generate any. Mopped the floor with disinfectant that leaves everything smelling of fake lemon. Wiped the rolling table, the windowsill, the arms of visitors chair no one had ever sat in. Standard routine, one I'd repeated in hundreds of ICU rooms across 30 years. But something made me pause that night. Maybe it was the total silence beneath the machines. Maybe it was how peaceful she looked. Not like death, more like sleep, as though she might open her eyes any second and ask where she was. Maybe it was the loneliness hanging in the air like humidity, or maybe it was that she reminded me faintly of my own mother. Not in appearance, since my mother was Puerto Rican, dark-haired, round-faced, nothing like this pale woman with sharp features and gray blonde hair. But in the dignity she carried, even unconscious. My mother had carried herself the same way while dying of cancer 15 years earlier. Dignity, even as everything was being stripped from her. "What's her name?" I asked Jessica. She looked up, surprised. Janitors don't usually ask questions. We're not really considered part of the medical team, just present. "Melissa," Jessica said. "Melissa Dixon. Apparently a pretty big deal. CEO of Dixon Industries, chemical manufacturing, worth billions. Massive stroke. Came in today. Found unconscious at her desk. She have family?" "Son. Thomas. 40s, I think. He was here earlier." Jessica paused, choosing her words the careful way nurses do. They see and know everything, but are trained toward diplomacy. "He seemed, stressed. Upset, obviously. But also," she trailed off. "Also what?" "Also impatient. Kept asking when we'd know if she'd wake up. Kept talking about arrangements, decisions, moving forward. I don't know. Maybe that's just how some people process grief. Business-like. Or maybe, I thought, but didn't say, that's how some people process inheritance." I finished cleaning, but before leaving I did something I don't normally do, something I'd stopped doing years back after watching too many patients die and growing too attached. I touched Melissa's hand, briefly, just to let her know someone was there. Her skin was cool, not cold, alive. I could feel her pulse under my fingertips, faint but steady. "Good night, Mrs. Dixon," I said quietly. "I'll see you tomorrow." Jessica smiled as I left. "That's sweet of you, Peter." "Just being polite," I said. But it was more than that, and we both knew it. The second night, I brought my phone and played classical music while I cleaned. Nothing loud. Hospitals have rules about noise, even overnight. Just soft strains of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, the same piece my daughter Sarah had performed at her high school recital 4 years earlier, the recital where I'd cried in the audience out of sheer pride. Sarah was studying music education at NYU now, living in a Brooklyn dorm, working as a barista, tutoring kids and piano on weekends, picking up shifts at a campus library, 3 jobs stacked atop her loans and scholarships, and whatever small amount I could contribute. Sometimes I felt I'd failed her, that if I'd been smarter, gone to college, landed a better job, she wouldn't need to grind so hard, could focus purely on her studies instead of juggling 3 jobs and a full course load. But she never complained, never once asked why I hadn't done better. She just worked the way I'd taught her to. I hit play on Moonlight Sonata, the gentle piano filling the quiet room. Jessica walked in while I was mopping beneath the bed and paused to listen. "That's beautiful," she said. "What made you think to play music?" "My daughter loves classical music," I said. "She's studying to be a music teacher." And I read somewhere, maybe one of those free health magazines in the waiting room, that coma patients might be able to hear, that music and voices can help, might stimulate the brain somehow. I don't know if it's true. Some studies suggest it, Jessica said. "We don't really know what coma patients experience, but I think it's nice." Better than silence, and it can't hurt. That's what I figured. By the third night, I'd started talking to her. Not because I truly believed she could hear, or maybe because I hoped she could. I don't know. Loneliness does strange things to a person, and I've been lonely a long time. "Good evening, Mrs. Dixon," I said, wheeling in my cart. "It's Peter, the janitor. Here to clean your room. Sorry if the mop bucket's loud. This one's got a squeaky I keep meaning to fix." I emptied her trash. Still empty, still no visitors. Started mopping. "I played you some Beethoven last night. Tonight, I brought Chopin. My daughter Sarah says Chopin's more emotional, Beethoven more intellectual. I don't really know the difference, but I trust her judgment. She's the expert." I wiped down the windowsill. Someone had left the blinds open, and beyond the glass sat the lights of Manhattan, the city that never sleeps, going about its business while Melissa Dixon lay suspended between living and dying. "Sarah's at NYU," I continued. "Music education. Wants to teach elementary school kids. Says she wants to give them what I gave her, a love of music. Though honestly, I can't carry a tune in a bucket. I just enjoy listening. Her mother, my wife, she was the musical one. Sang in the church choir, had a voice like an angel." I paused, realizing I was talking about Rachel. Hadn't said her name aloud in months. Rachel died when Sarah was 3. Got sick, gone in 6 months. I wrung out the mop, watching the dirty water swirl down the drain. I raised Sarah alone after that. Did my best. Wasn't always great at it. Definitely wasn't great at homework help or fixing hair for school pictures. But we made it work. I moved to the other side of the bed. "You have a son, right? Thomas? The nurses mentioned him. I hope he's treating you right. I hope he's talking to you. Because even if you can't hear us, even if you're somewhere far away right now, I think it matters. I think it matters that people care." I don't know why I told her all this. Maybe because she couldn't judge me. Maybe because it felt good talking to someone who wouldn't see me as just the janitor. Maybe because loneliness is heavy, and sometimes you need to set it down, even in front of a stranger who can't respond. By the end of the first week, it had become routine. Arrive at 11 after dinner trays were cleared and visiting hours ended, and the ICU had gone as quiet as it ever gets. Clean the room, play music, Beethoven, Chopin, Bach, Debussy, whatever Sarah had recommended in our last call. Talk to Melissa as though she were awake. Tell her about my day, about Sarah, about the chemistry textbooks I kept checking out from the Queens Public Library every 2 weeks. "I'm reading about polymer chemistry right now," I told her one night. "Fascinating stuff, the way molecules bond, the way you can manipulate chemical structures to create different properties. Your company does a lot of work with industrial polymers, right? Read an article about Dixon Industries last week about your eco-friendly manufacturing processes. Pretty impressive." I sat down in the visitor's chair for a moment. Something I wasn't supposed to do, but my feet ached and I was tired and no one was around to stop me. I wanted to study chemistry when I was young, I admitted. Had dreams of MIT, Columbia, becoming a researcher, maybe working somewhere like your company. But my dad left when I was 17. Walked out one day, never came back. My mom worked 2 jobs, but it still wasn't enough, so I dropped out of high school, got my GED, started working. Needed help with rent, food bills. I looked at Melissa's still face, wondering if somewhere in the darkness of her coma this reached her, if it mattered. Never went to college. Never studied chemistry beyond those library books. Became a janitor instead. Honest work. I'm not ashamed of it. But sometimes I wonder what I could have been if life had gone differently, if I'd had the opportunities other people got. I stood back up, returned to work. Anyway, that's enough about me. By week 2, something shifted. The nurses started whispering. Dr. Martinez, the neurologist, began visiting more often, running more tests. I caught fragments of conversation, medical terms I didn't fully follow, but pieces stuck, increased brain activity, responding to stimuli, possible emergence. Good news, surely. But then Thomas started showing up more too. Melissa's son, 42, dressed in an expensive suit, the kind of man who looked at janitors like we were furniture. He never once acknowledged me, would walk straight past as though I didn't exist, stand in his mother's room on his phone talking about business, about money, about handling the situation. One night, cleaning outside room 407, I overheard him with Dr. Martinez. "How much longer?" Thomas's voice sharp and patient. Mr. Dixon, your mother is showing improvement. It's possible she could wake up. We need to give her time. Time? It's been 2 weeks. You said there was no brain activity. There wasn't. But now there is. The brain is remarkable. Sometimes I want a second opinion. I want you to declare her brain dead so we can make arrangements. A long silence. Then Dr. Martinez, carefully, Sir, that would be medically inaccurate. Your mother is not brain dead. She's in a coma with improving neural function. Then keep her comfortable. No extraordinary measures. Do you understand? Another silence. Yes, sir. I froze outside the door, kept my head down, kept pushing him up. Invisible. But I heard every word. 3 days before, on March 15th, I was cleaning room 407 at 11 as always. Melissa looked the same, peaceful, stable, the machines beeping their steady rhythm. I was playing Claire de Lune on my phone, wiping the bedside table when her hand moved, just a twitch of finger, barely noticeable. I froze. Mrs. Dixon, I whispered. Nothing, but I swear her eyelids fluttered. I hit the call button. Jessica came in. I think she moved, I said. Her hand and her eyes. Jessica checked the monitors. Everything looks normal. Probably just muscle spasms. Happens in coma patients. Are you sure? I'll note in her chart, but try not to get your hopes up. These things, they don't always mean what we want them to mean. But I knew what I'd seen. 2 hours later, taking my break in the 4th floor janitor's closet, I heard voices in the hallway. Administrators, a late-night meeting. Dixon case needs to be resolved. The son is insistent, wants to move forward with arrangements. But Dr. Martinez says she's improving. Dr. Martinez can be overruled. Mr. Dixon has influence, major hospital donor. He wanted declaration of brain death by end of week. That's not ethical if she's not brain dead. That's above our pay grade. Just make sure the paperwork is ready. I stood in that dark closet, mop in hand, invisible as always, and understood exactly what was happening. Thomas Dixon was going to kill his mother for her money. The next day, March 17th, I saw the notice on the ICU board. Dixon, Melissa, transferred to palliative care, family requesting cessation of life support, funeral arrangements pending. I found Jessica. What happened? She was improving. Jessica looked uncomfortable. Family decision. They have the right to refuse treatment. But she was getting better. You said, Peter. She touched my arm gently. I know you care, but this isn't our call. The family decides. I went to room 407. Empty. Bed stripped, machines gone. I asked another nurse where Melissa had been transferred. She wasn't transferred, she said. She passed away last night. She what? She died, Peter. I'm sorry. I know you've gotten attached. When's the funeral? Tomorrow. St. Catherine's Church. 10 a.m. I left the hospital in a daze, went home to my tiny Queens apartment, couldn't sleep because none of it made sense. At 3 in the morning, I went back to the hospital, used my key card, janitors have access everywhere, and made my way to the palliative care wing. Room 802. The door read Dixon. I shouldn't have gone in, but I did. And there she was. Melissa Dixon in the bed, breathing, chest rising and falling, monitors still beeping. Not dead. Alive. I stood there 10 minutes watching her breathe, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack a rib. She wasn't dead. Still unconscious, still in a coma, but alive. And they were going to bury her the next morning. Which brings us to now. March 18th, 10 a.m., St. Catherine's Church. I'm standing at the back in my janitor's uniform, 400 people in expensive clothing around me, flowers everywhere, a closed casket at the front. Thomas Dixon stands at the podium delivering eulogy, his voice steady, practiced, thick with rehearsed emotion. My mother was a brilliant woman, he says, a pioneer in her field. She built Dixon Industries from nothing. She gave everything to her work, to her company, to the future of chemical innovation. And when the time came, she taught us the hardest lesson of all, when to let go, when to accept that some battles can't be won, when to choose peace over suffering. People dab at their eyes with tissues. I'm shaking with rage. Thomas continues. Yesterday, my mother passed peacefully. She was ready. She'd fought long enough. And now we honor her memory by letting her rest. That's when I move. I walk down the center aisle, past the pews of mourners, past the flowers and candles and expensive grief. Thomas spots me approaching, stops mid-sentence, his face draining white. I reach the front of the church and turn to face the congregation. She's not dead, I say, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. Melissa Dixon is not dead. She's alive. She's in a coma at Mercy Hospital right now. I saw her this morning at 3 a.m. She's breathing. Her heart is beating. This funeral is a lie. Chaos breaks out. Gasping, shouting, people rising from their seats. Tulmas recovers fast. Security? This man is delusional. He's a janitor from the hospital. He's clearly disturbed. Remove him immediately. 2 security guards start toward me, but I hold my ground. I'm not delusional. I say louder now. I'm a night janitor at Mercy Hospital. I've cleaned Melissa Dixon's room every night for 3 weeks. I checked on her this morning at 3 a.m. She's alive. She's in room 802, palliative care wing. Call the hospital. Check for yourselves. This is outrageous, Thomas snarls. My mother died yesterday. We have a death certificate. This man is lying. I interrupt. Like you've been lying? Like you pressured doctors to declare her brain dead when she was improving? Like you bribed administrators to falsify records so you could inherit her company? The church goes dead silent. An older woman rises in the front row, elegant 70s, sharp-eyed. I'm Margaret Winters, Melissa's attorney and friend for 30 years. Young man, are you certain of what you're saying? Yes, ma'am. Completely certain. I saw her breathing this morning. She's not dead. Margaret pulls out her phone, dials, puts it on speaker. Mercy Hospital. How may I direct your call? This is Margaret Winters, attorney for Melissa Dixon. I need to confirm the status of your patient, Melissa Dixon, currently listed as deceased. A pause, typing. 1 moment, please. A longer pause. Ma'am, Melissa Dixon is currently in room 802, palliative care. Status, coma, stable condition. The phone nearly slips from Margaret's hand. She's alive, she whispers, then louder, she's alive. The church erupts. What followed became a blur. Police were called. Thomas was escorted out screaming about lawsuits and slander. Margaret phoned the hospital administrator, demanded answers, threatened legal action that would destroy the hospital's reputation. The corrupt administrator, a man named Richard Stevens, whom Thomas had paid $500,000 to falsify death records, confessed within hours. Thomas had threatened to pull all Dixon Industries donations unless the hospital declared his mother brain dead, had arranged a rushed funeral, had planned to cremate her body before anyone could investigate. The death certificate was fake. The hospital records were falsified. Thomas had intended to inherit Dixon Industries, worth over $3 billion, and sell it off immediately to pay off gambling debts he'd hidden for years. Dr. Martinez, the neurologist who'd reported Melissa's improvement, came forward and admitted he'd been overruled, threatened, told to stay quiet or lose his job. Thomas Dixon was arrested, charged with attempted murder, fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Bail was set at $10 million. As for me, I went back to Mercy Hospital, back to room 802. She woke up 4 days later on March 22nd. I was cleaning her room at 11 p.m. as always, playing Beethoven as always, talking to her about my day as always. Evening, Mrs. Dixon. It's Peter. You're safe now. Everyone knows the truth. Her hand moved, not a twitch this time, a deliberate motion, fingers closing around mine. I nearly screamed, hit the call button frantically. Her eyes opened slowly, confused, searching. Mrs. Dixon? My voice was shaking. Can you hear me? She looked at me, squeezed my hand. Nurses rushed in, doctors, tests, chaos. But through all of it, Melissa kept holding onto my hand, and when they asked if she knew where she was, if she remembered anything, she whispered a single word. Peter. Somehow, through the coma, through the darkness, she'd heard my voice. Recovery took weeks. Physical therapy, speech therapy, relearning everything a stroke steals from a person. Margaret Winters visited daily, handled the legal fallout with Thomas, who was headed to prison for a long stretch, and managed the hospital investigation. Richard Stevens lost his medical license and faced criminal charges, and Mercy Hospital settled with Melissa for $15 million rather than face a public trial. I returned to my usual routine, cleaning floors, emptying trash. But one evening in late April, I was summoned to the hospital administrator's office. The new administrator, Dr. Patricia Cole, who'd replaced Stevens. "Mr. Young, Mrs. Dixon has requested to see you. She's being discharged today. Would you mind going to her room?" I went, still in my janitor's uniform, still carrying my mop. Melissa sat up in bed, dressed in real clothes, thin but unmistakably alive, so alive. Margaret Winters sat beside her. "Peter," Melissa said, her voice still weak but clear. "Sit down, please." "You said. Margaret has told me everything you did, how you stopped the funeral, how you exposed Thomas, how you saved my life." Her eyes filled with tears. "But she also told me, the nurses also told me, that you were there every single night, talking to me, playing music, treating me like a person, not a body." "You are a person," I said simply. "The nurses said you talked about your life, about your daughter, about your dream to study chemistry." My face heated. "I didn't mean to bother you with, you didn't bother me, Peter. You kept me tethered to life. I heard you. Not all of it, not everything, but your voice, the music, it was like a thread pulling me back from wherever I was. You saved me in more ways than just stopping that funeral." She reached for an envelope on the bedside table. Margaret passed it to her. "Peter, I'm not a woman who believes in charity. I believe in opportunity. I believe in giving people the chance they deserve." She held out the envelope. "This is for you." I opened it, a letter and a check inside. The check read, $200,000. I nearly dropped it. "Mrs. Dixon, I can't. That's for your mortgage. Pay it off. You shouldn't have to worry about housing while you're pursuing your education." "My education? You told me you wanted to study chemistry, that you never had the opportunity. Well, now you do." She produced another envelope. "This is a letter to the Dean of Columbia University's Chemistry Department. I sit on their board. You're admitted, Peter. Full scholarship, all expenses paid. You start in the fall semester." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. "There's more," Melissa continued. "Once you start your studies, you'll have an internship at Dixon Industries. Paid. In our chemical research division, learning from the best. And when you graduate, if you want it, there's a job waiting." She smiled a real smile. "And one more thing. Your daughter, Sarah, Margaret found out she's struggling to cover tuition at NYU. That's taken care of. Her remaining tuition, her expenses, everything. She can focus on becoming the music teacher she wants to be." Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop them. "What?" I managed to whisper. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you saw me, Peter, when no one else did. When I was invisible to everyone, including my own son. You saw me. You treated me with dignity. You cared." She leaned forward. "And because you're 52 years old, and most people would say it's too late to go back to school, to start a new career. But I don't believe that. I built my company at 40, when everyone said I was too old to start. And I know that if someone had given me a chance, had believed in me the way you believed I was worth caring for, it would have made all the difference. It's not too late. It's never too late. That was 6 months ago. Now I'm sitting in a chemistry lecture at Columbia University, 52 years old, the oldest student in the room by 30 years. My classmates call me Pops. I don't mind. I work at Dixon Industries 3 days a week. Research work, studying how chemical compounds interact, how polymers form, everything I used to read about in library books and dream about understanding. Sarah graduated from NYU last month, landed a job teaching music at a middle school in Brooklyn. She cried when she got the offer. So did I. My mortgage is paid off. I'm not a janitor anymore, though I'll always be grateful for those 30 years. They taught me that every job matters, that every person matters, that being invisible doesn't mean you don't see. Melissa Dixon is back running Dixon Industries. She's instituted new policies, doubled the minimum wage for all employees, added healthcare benefits for part-time workers, created a scholarship fund for employees wanting to return to school. Thomas is in prison 20 years. He'll be 62 when he gets out, if he gets out. Sometimes I think back to that morning at St. Catherine's Church, walking down the aisle, for 100 people staring, Thomas Dixon's face draining white, the moment I said, "She's not dead." I think about all the ways it could have gone wrong. If no one had believed me, if they'd thrown me out, if Melissa had never woken up. But she did wake up, and they did believe me, and everything changed. Not because I was special, not because I was smart or brave or extraordinary in any way, but because I was there, because I paid attention, because I treated someone with kindness when no one else was watching, because I wasn't invisible to her, and she wasn't invisible to me. That's the thing about really seeing someone. It changes everything. It changed my life. It saved hers. And it reminded me that everyone matters. Every voice, every person, no matter their job title, no matter who they are. We all matter. And sometimes the people nobody notices are the ones who end up changing the world. So let me ask you, what would you have done in my position? Would you have spoken up when everyone thought you were crazy? Would you have trusted what you knew, even with no one believing you? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this story reminded you that everyone's voice matters, that everyone deserves to be seen, hit that subscribe button, because the world needs more stories like this. Stories that prove courage doesn't come from power or money. It comes from caring about people when no one's watching.